Good afternoon, doctors. To get started with the session, I would request the chairperson, Dr. Veer Vikram Singh, to unmute and switch on the camera. Dr. Veer Vikram.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody.
You are not clear. Can you turn off the background, because I think the background is creating some problem.
Is it fine?
This is also it was clear somewhat in between, but not as yet. I think Dr. Vikram, you can turn off the background because the background is creating some problems.
Yeah, I've turned it off. It's the normal room background.
No, I don't think so, because there is some background is coming like. Yeah, fine. This is fine.
So, sorry, I couldn't put that up. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Ensuring happy patients after cataract surgery. This is the instructions course through which we will try and justify how to ensure that the patients who have been operated or are to be operated are taken well care of, so that the ultimate final goal of having a smiling, broad smiling patient is achieved. It is not an easy task. And for that, we have divided IC into 6 subtopics. We'll try and cover from pre-operative, operative to the post-operative management of an unhappy patient. And for this, first of all, I'd like to thank All India Ophthalmic Society and Scientific Committee, especially Dr. Partha Biswas, the Chairman Scientific Committee, for giving us, our whole team, a chance to present on this topic. Our first speaker is Dr. Sumit Sachdeva. Dr. Sumit Sachdeva is a professor at Regional Institute of Ophthalmology, Rohtak PGIMS. He is a friend and a colleague, and he is a great teacher. He has a special interest in glaucoma, even though he's a very versatile phacosurgeon. I'd like Dr. Sumit to start his topic. Dr. Sumit, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Vikram. Thanks for the kind introduction. I'll be sharing my screen right now. And first of all, I would like to thank the AIOC 21 committee, scientific committee, for giving us a chance. And Dr. Vikram, thanks for considering me for this instruction course. Are my slides visible?
Yeah. Yes, Dr. Sumit.
Yeah. So like Dr. Vikram has said, it's a very, very important that now the patients coming to the OPD, they are the ones who expect a lot, and we should be able to come up to their expectations and give a realistic counseling to them, so that whatever they have a realistic expectation of what is to come. So I'll be starting my talk on that. We all know that the cataract surgery is the most commonly performed ophthalmic surgery worldwide, and it is mostly very safe. But yes, complications do happen even in the best of hands. And the patient counseling is all the more important because of the following reasons. First of all, the medico-legal reason, which is the first and the foremost, very important. Not only in India, but abroad, it is much more important, because the medico-legal cases against the ophthalmic doctors are much more than against any other specialty. Then the morale of the patient is also affected. If you have a good counselor, if you can counsel the patient well, then the morale becomes much better. And it is also ethical for you to discuss all the pros and cons of the surgery beforehand. The cataract surgery has evolved from a vision restoring surgery to eagle vision. Now the patient expects a fine vision, a very precise vision, and to come up to that expectation, we need to understand how the patient behaves. So to ensure happy outcomes, it depends upon the work profile and the visual demand of the patient, the age of the patient at which he comes to you, his economic status, again, a very important consideration for him, the comorbidities he might be suffering like diabetes, hypertension, glaucoma, anything, and the personality types. Always look at the personality types of the patient and understand before opting for the lens or for the type of the surgery that you want to offer to them. Now, how does a patient come to our OPD? Mostly they come with diminution of vision, they have work-related problems or driving problems, or they are referred by a colleague or a friend who says that, yes, you have something and you can go and get yourself tested. And when the patient is told that he has cataract, it all depends upon two factors mostly. The age of the patient at which he comes to you. The younger the patient comes to you, the more expectations he has, and the more precise he would like his vision to be. And the stage of the cataract. If it's an early posterior subcapsular type of a cataract where the patient has a 6x6, 6x9 vision, but his work is somewhat hampered, he will demand more. But if a patient has a mature kind of a cataract where he's not able to see anything, so whatever vision that he gets postoperatively, he's much more happier if he even gets a suboptimal kind of a vision. So what are the expectations of the patient? Now, the patients generally nowadays expect the moon. They want to have a very clear vision. They want to perform all the activities like near, intermediate, and distance with ease. They want to have a comfortable night driving, and they want to perform the day-to-day activities easily. So in summary, they want to have a childlike vision. And why is the counseling very important nowadays? Because this counseling helps us to restore the autonomy of the patient. He has the right to make the correct decision. We can talk about the risk and the benefit ratio with the patient. It allays the patient's fears and ensures realistic expectations. Now, how to go about counseling? Now, first of all, we have to convince ourselves that what is the best treatment option for the patient, keeping in mind his eye condition, number one, the age, his pocket, how much he can afford, the expectations of the patient, and then discuss various options and expected outcomes. Be very clear and realistic about the results and discuss potential risks and limitations there and then. Don't leave it to end when the complication has occurred that, yes, this could have happened. Now, what is covered under counseling? We cover what exactly are we going to do in the patient's eye. So what does the cataract surgery involve? The preoperative assessment, like the PAC, what the other comorbidities the patient might be having, the type of anesthesia which we are going to use, whether topical, local, or the general anesthesia, which type of surgery is being offered, the post-operative care and duration. Duration is very important because the patient expects that as soon as I go home, I should be able to see. So post-operative care and the period of recovery is very important. If we take care of all these things, the patient will be less anxious, will have a better self-confidence, there will be a better relationship with you, and there will be much less stress on you as well as the patient once you have counseled him accordingly. Now, what more to cover? If you want to cover, you have to cover the type of the surgery, the type of IOL that you are going to implant in him, the expected outcome of that IOL and the surgery, and the expected time of recovery, common post-operative problems, and most importantly, the cost of the surgery. Cost of the surgery has to be genuinely told beforehand so that the patient doesn't crib or say that this was not told to me earlier. Now, the preoperative assessment, it involves a whole lot of things which will be covered by Dr. Soumya in her next talk, but mostly we'll cover the lid hygiene, the cornea status, the AC reaction, the pupillary reflex, the grade of the cataract. Other things have to be covered. Then the type of the surgery that Dr. Amit Porwal will be covering, and what all tips are required, the phaco, femto, SICS, ECC, whatever is best for the patient. Again, the type of the IOL has to be judged, has to be according to the patient's needs and his pocket, whatever the patient desires. And one word of caution that the candidates who are strictly type A personalities who are unwilling to normally long or short eyes are not good candidates for premium IOLs. So just be aware. And expected outcome, we have to look at the patient's expected outcome. We judge it by the preoperative condition like any glaucoma or ARMD that the patient might be having, the comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, anything else, and the type of surgery that we have performed. We should always tell them about some post-operative problems that they might have, some redness, some pain, mild itching, foreign body sensation, watering, because one patient might tell the other patient that he did not feel a thing. So the next patient, if he feels even a pinprick type of a thing, and he'll say that, no, my surgery has gone wrong. So it's always better to tell them that these are the common problems that you might be facing. The post-operative care again will be taken up by Dr. Amit, and it is very important that tell them about the lid hygiene, the restrictions that the patient needs to have, and be patient to the patient's problem. Always reassure them and tell them that yes, all is well, and we are willing to make the change if required. They always good to have the flyers like this in your OPDs so that you can just tell them that these are the restrictions. So my carry home message would be that the proper counseling plays a very important role in happy patient outcomes. You have to tailor the counseling according to the individual needs and his expectations. Be very realistic with the patient, always under promise and over deliver. And if we are able to do that, yes, we are going to have very happy and very thankful patients. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Sumit, for very well covering the pre-operative expectations. Next speaker.
I'll stop the share now. Yeah.
Our next speaker is Dr. Soumya. Dr. Soumya is going to talk about the pre-operative considerations. Dr. Soumya is a versatile cataract and a refractive surgeon. She holds many important portfolios. She is a great awarded speaker and a surgeon, and she has many international presentations as well. And it is a pleasure that Dr. Soumya is going to cover the pre-operative considerations for a cataract surgery to make a happy patient. Dr. Soumya, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me in your session. I'd like to, at the outset, start by thanking AIOC for this wonderful session and also for making this virtual platform possible. Is my screen visible?
Yeah, you are.
Your screen is visible. Yeah.
Okay. I think I need to just start the PowerPoint on. Is this visible? I'm sorry.
It's the last slide which is being shown.
Is this fine? Okay. So at the outset, I'd like to thank AIOC and Dr. Cheeler and Dr. Amit for putting together this wonderful session. I think all of us can agree that cataract surgery is still the center of most of our practices. And so the outcome of these surgeries are extremely important for us. So it's very important to establish a rapport with the patient before the patient enters the operating theater. So this starts from the ambience that is there in our waiting room to the staff attitude and also how long the patient has waited to see you before his time. It is very important to take time to prepare a couple of things about the patient, like the name, the previous visits. And once the patient is in, it's very important to give enough chair time to reassure the patient about whatever whatever worries he may have, and to be able to communicate very clearly about what problems or what outcomes the patient should accept and be able to expect after surgery. So examination, I think it's not to be mentioned that detailed examination is absolutely important. All of us know that. What we should remember is it should progress from a non-touch to a touch procedure. So something like keratometry or topography must be done first before we move on to something like applanation. A detailed examination and a bilateral examination is absolutely important. Fundus details must be looked for. The vision must correlate with cataract, and if it doesn't, we must look for other causes of reduced vision. And if there is anything, it must be explained to the patient prior. It's very important to look out for potential sources of infection, and that's literally the first thing that we would consider during evaluation of any surgery. I do a syringing for all my patients, but busier practices should at least do a Roplas. It is important to look out for meibomian gland disease and blepharitis, as quite often these can be the causes of post-operative infections as well. The general systemic condition and the hygiene of the patient should be looked out for, and if there is anything that needs attention, the patient must be informed and these issues must be addressed. In the anterior chamber, it's important to look for the depth of the AC so we can assess what kind of difficulty we may face during surgery. And if it is needed, it's best to do a YAG iridotomy in cases of very shallow chamber prior to surgery. The corneal endothelium must be examined, and if there is no specula that is available, at least guttae should be looked out for, or pigmentation on the cornea should be looked out for. It's important to assess the grade of the cataract, and also to look out for any complicated situations that may present itself, like a posterior polar cataract or a subluxated cataract. So a dilated examination is absolutely essential. So dry eye is very important in cataract surgery because it not only influences the preoperative conditions, so the preoperative keratometry and the topography, but it also greatly influences how the patient perceives his cataract outcome to be, especially in premium cases. And we have another talk on this, so I'm not going to dwell too much upon it. Posterior segment, we all know we do examine it routinely, but it's important to do a dilated examination in all cases. The periphery must be examined. And in cases of premium lenses, maybe even a macular OCT can be done to be on the safer side. So it is very important to have bang-on keratometry, bang-on biometry in all cases. So the topography and keratometry should be done prior to procedures like dilation or contact procedures. So we don't influence that by doing the contact procedure. And astigmatism must be looked out for, and either a toric lens must be advised, or the patient should be made aware that he will need glasses after surgery. It's important to choose the right formula and compare it with the other eye biometry as well. And until the examination is complete, it's best not to counsel about IOLs. So an immersion is always better than contact. It's more accurate. And if an optical is available, then these biometers are of great value in patients with staphylomas and especially high myomes. It's very important to not oversimplify the procedure. It is a surgery at the end of the day. The patient must be able to accept that and accept any discomfort or complication that might be there after surgery. So oversimplifying it only puts the doctor on the spot after surgery. Definitely don't be in a hurry to operate if the systemic conditions are not favorable. Take a physician's opinion in these cases. Treat blepharitis and dry eye prior to surgery, and do wait for the right IOL if it is not available. It is also important to be realistic about one's abilities. One should know what cases they can take up and what cases to refer. It's best for both for the patient and the doctor. So pricing and money can be a bone of contention in many cases. So it's very important to be clear to the patient about what add-ons or what extra costs he may or may not encounter at the end of surgery. Whether the patient is treated or not, we all know that the case sheet has to be treated these days. So this has to be a continuous process along with the treatment of the patient. And dealing with unhappy patients is something that we all learn in the course of our practice. But what is most important is that we must acknowledge their feelings, and sometimes we may be at fault. So, it may be a good learning curve for us as well. So this is my center, Lopamudra's Medical Center, and my Drishti Eye Hospital. This is where it is in Coorg. And once the pandemic is over, do visit us, and wishing that it happens sooner than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Soumya. And it was really a very well summed up presentation. And we would all love to visit Coorg sooner than later. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is Perfecting Operative Steps by Dr. Amit Porwal. Dr. Amit Porwal doesn't need any introduction. Dr. Amit Porwal doesn't need any introduction. He is at present the member scientific committee AIOS, and he is, I would say, a marathon speaker who has more than 480, it's nearly 500, you must have made some mistake in counting, Amit, more than 500 presentations. He has varied awarded gold medals to his credit, and he's a great teacher. He's a senior consultant, head of glaucoma unit at Chotram Netralaya, Indore. and he takes keen interest in educating the fellows and the students out there. I have now request Dr. Amit Porwal to present each step of perfecting the operative part so that we don't have any unhappy patient. Dr. Amit, please.
Thank you, Vikram, for those warm words. And without wasting much of time, I would request the audio-visual team, Aman, to give me a buzzer at the end of 1 minute before my talk and one at the end of my time allotted. So my time allotted is 10 minutes.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay, so I request one minute before and one at the end of 10 minutes. So I'm going to talk about perfecting operative steps. Now, perfecting operative steps is basically mastering and timely management of the intraoperative steps, which is essential for a happy patient. If you have not mastered your intraoperative steps properly, be it phaco, be it SICS, be it femtocataract surgery, you will land up with a very unhappy patient. So basically, this course is for comprehensive ophthalmologists. So my talk will be more based on the phaco-cataract surgery, but it applies to all sorts of surgery, whether it is manual SICS, phaco, or the flats. So tissue handling is important. So we start from the block. So be prepared to, when you give the block, whether you are comfortable in doing a topical block or a peribulbar block. This is very, very important. You don't have to take it to the ego that, I'm a topical surgeon. You see whether you are compatible to do in a topical, to do that particular case in topical anesthesia or peribulbar anesthesia, and choose proper anesthetic technique. The incision length and the width of the incisions are very important. I'll show in my future slides with the videos that if the incisions are not adequate, what all complications can occur. Capsule management is very, very important, be it NS2 or 3 gate cataract or a mature or a hypermature cataract. I always advocate that please use trypan blue dye and use a proper CCC technique. Follow the dictum which is being taught how to do a CCC. Trypan blue always enhances the anterior capsule visibility, and it is a must. And I always advocate to all my students that don't proceed your cataract surgery without using trypan blue. Also, trypan blue it reduces the elasticity of the anterior capsule and makes it more brittle. So if at all your excess is going out with a shearing force, you can pull it towards the center and regain the excess. Viscoelastic, you have to be very careful when you want to use a viscoadaptive, when you want to use a viscodispersive. Coming to the chopping technique, no egos. 4-quadrant technique is good, stop chop is good, direct chop, lip chop, every chop technique is good. Whatever works best in your hand with causing minimum damage to the surrounding tissue should be used. Cortex wash, always the dictum is don't never pull the cortex, always try to peel it off, have a tangential force, never have a perpendicular force. Always polish the posterior capsule. Anterior capsular polishing should be done only when indicated in certain cases. IOL loading and insertion is very, very important. What things you have to keep in mind when you're loading the IOL? The temperature, the visualization when you're loading, and the angle of insertion of the IOL, the angle of insertion at the cartridge into the anterior chamber or the tunnel technique. You have to be very careful. Why I'm highlighting all these points in the subsequent videos, I'll be telling you all what can go wrong. Visco wash behind the IOL is very, very important. If you don't wash your visco behind the IOL, there might be an IOL rotation, especially it is very drastic when you are using a toric IOL, or you can, if your excess is small, you can have a capsular distension syndrome. Wound closure, again, proper hydration is a technique which has to be learned, and all the 6 wards has to be hydrated. So without wasting much time, I now proceed with my first surgery, that is mastering a perfect cataract surgery. So always after giving the block, whatever is comfortable, you have to stabilize the globe. So if you want to cause less bleeding, what I advocate is to use these fixation rings which are available with any surgical instrument. So I use this fixation ring instead of using one-tooth forceps, because this gives us more stability to the globe. And before you make the side port, the 2 side port insertions, always inspect your side port blades, whether the tip of the blade is sharp or it is bent. Don't make too large a side port, too large an incision. Always make sure that the incision is adequate at the limbus. The 2 side ports are created. Technique of injecting the trypan blue is very important. You take trypan blue on a 1 ml syringe with air. So when you inject, first the air goes, and when we are below the air over the anterior capsule, spread your trypan blue. Then use a BSS to wash the trypan blue what you have injected. What I usually do is I wash through both the side ports. First through that side port from where I have not injected the dye, I wash through that, because I want the trypan blue dye to come out from both the side ports, so that both these side ports get stained a bit with the help of trypan blue. So once it is stained, you don't struggle to find out your incision where it is when you're putting your bimanual. Again, fix up the globe and plan up your tunnel. It should not be very thin or a very long tunnel. It should be an adequate size. The length and the width of the tunnel should be adequate. You can see that the length and the width is adequate. A 3-planar incision works out better. Always try to make a 3-planar or a 2-planar. Coming to the rexes, it is very important. This particular step is going to help you master your rexes. These are rexes marker which are available. This is a 5.5 rexes marker. You center the pupil and then center the marker on the center of the pupil and mark it on the cornea without any dye. Just put an imprint of the marker on the corneal epithelium. You get this landmark. Now you start with your rexes following the dictum of the rexes. What has been taught, that always make short nicks. Keep the capsule flat over the anterior capsule. Flap it and keep it flat. Whenever the chamber gets shallow, again reform the anterior chamber with visco. So the rexes will never give away. Now you have a marker on the cornea which will help you as a guide to have a 5.5 rexes. So I request everybody to start using this, because by using this technique of rexes marking, you will be getting a more central circular rexes and of uniform size. So basically you are refining your own results by doing this. You can see in this video, I am proceeding edge to edge with what is marked. And my capsular flap is always flat because the capsule is stained. I can easily see that I'm peeling only the capsule without disturbing the underlying cortex. But this is very, very important. Now this trypan blue always helps. Why? Because it reduces the elasticity and makes it brittle also. So if at all in mature or hypermature cataract, your rexes is going away, you can just drag the capsule towards the center, and with the shearing force, you regain the control of your rexes. So this is the way you are going to do the rexes. And as I told you, and this impression what you have created on the epithelium is very transient. After 2 hours, when you open up the patch, you don't see this rexes marker which is there. Coming to the hydro, always use what I recommend is use a flat tipped hydro dissection cannula. Never use a round tip. Lift up the edge of the anterior capsule, and when you inject, make sure that you see the wave. After you see the wave, always tap the nucleus and decompress it. If the cataract is NS2 or 3 grade, I always recommend to make an hydro dissection followed by delineation. And why hydro delineation? Because you should always have the protective epinucleus layer that will give you as a cushion, and that will avoid the rent if at all there is any deep trench or any if a phacoprobe is more deeper. Another thing you saw, I was injecting viscoelastic substance on the cornea and not saline. There is a general trend which I've seen wherever I travel, that everybody tells their OT staff, saline dalo, saline dalo. No, I don't advise this. The more you put saline on the corneal epithelium, the epithelium gets damaged, the basal cell junction gets damaged, and the epithelium becomes bruised. So always cover the cornea if it is becoming dry with the help of HPMC. Now, with a good dialer or a chopper, what you are comfortable with, I usually use a long dialer, about 1 millimeter in length, the tip of the dialer. Try to rotate the nucleus at least 5 to 6 movements. Why 5 to 6 rounds? Because this will separate any corticocapsular adhesion which is there, and this will help you in your proper aspiration of the epinuclear shell also at the end of the surgery. And now coming to the chopping technique, always inspect your sleeve, whether it is torn or whether it is intact, whether the tip of the phaco is exposed adequately or no. Usually I tell we should expose about 0.75 to 1 millimeter. My preferred technique is a stop and chop or direct chop or a flip chop. As I told you, it depends on the type of cataract. You have to modify your chopping technique. So you should be well versed with all the technique. You saw I've made a deeper trench. Make the trench so deep that at least 2 times the thickness of the phaco tip you have entered deep. Then separate the 2 hemispheres, and you make sure that you visualize that the 2 hemispheres are being separated both at the inferior and the superior part. Once you have done that, then engage one of the hemisphere and try to chop into small techniques. Now again, the vacuum, the flow rate and the power should be adequate. You just need a bit of vacuum. If you're having a linear control, I can't display my settings over here because the overlay was not working. Just use a bit of vacuum for this NS2 to 3 grade cataract. Just engage, and you can see with the help of a dialer, you can just separate into small pieces. Again, separation, it is very important. You saw this step now. When you're separating, make sure that you separate through and through. If you just superficially separate and posteriorly the cataract is intact, then while aspiration, while aspirating or while emulsifying each and every quadrant, you'll have difficulty or you'll have more energy which is being wasted. So once you are chopped into 6 or 8 pieces, whatever you are comfortable with, the timer is, was it 10 minutes set? Only 1 minute is left in my talk. Can somebody guide? Aman?
Yes, sir.
It was 10-minute timer.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So you can see once the chopping is done, the hydration of the wound is very, very important. What I advocate is hydrate all the 6 walls of the incision. Never hydrate only the superior or the inferior wall. Always hydrate all the 6 walls. So that will help you in preventing endophthalmitis. Now, incision related, I can't show all the videos because we don't have much time. If it is a long incision, when you are creating a long bimanual incision or a long tunnel, when you are doing the phaco, you'll have a lot of corneal folds visible, which should not be visible. So I wouldn't advocate that. This is a video which shows that you felt that the rhexis was complete. But in spite of staining that hydric capsule, when we finished the rhexis, I was thinking the rhexis is complete. But when I was chopping, I realized it's a capsular flap. So timely recognition and management of that complication is very, very important. I'm sorry, I can't show all this because of paucity of time. Only thing which I would like to highlight is only a small video of 1 minute parallel going on. So when you are injecting the IOL, the temperature of the OT is very, very important, especially when you're using a hydrophobic IOL. If your temperature is too cold, you can see in the left-hand video that the trailing haptic is stuck into the cartridge. In the right-hand video, the IOL has rotated because of the temperature. The IOL has become hard and it has rotated and flipped and has been implanted in the wrong side. So now we have to flip it into the entry chamber. You saw the way I'm flipping it, and you have to redirect the proper orientation of the IOL into the entry chamber. So this timely recognition is very important, and that is possible only when you inspect each and every step of the surgery. So that's what I wanted to say. Thanks a lot. Thank you for the time taken.
Thank you, Dr. Amit. Dr. Amit has very nicely presented all the surgical steps. All of you are very proficient surgeons, but taking care of each and every simple step is really important. Each step carries a lot of significance for a final good outcome. Now, next speaker. Just as Dr. Saurabh Mittal. I'd like to invite Dr. Saurabh Mittal, and he's gonna speak on effective dry eye management. Dr. Saurabh Mittal is fellow Arvind. He has done his fellow in pediatric ophthalmology, squint, and cornea. He is a very learned surgeon. He does a lot of keratoplasties, and he's a proficient anterior segment as well as a refractive surgeon. Dr. Saurabh, he practices in Jalandhar. He has with Dr. Thend and has his own private setup as well. Dr. Saurabh.
Thank you, Vikram, for nice words. I thank All India Society and Vikram for including me for this particular session. And today, what we will be talking about is our surgical outcomes to make the patient feel happy after cataract surgery. And my talk will be on dry eye, which makes the patient uncomfortable after surgery. So here is one of our patients. He underwent a multifocal IOL implant with the femto-assisted cataract surgery. The surgery went on perfectly well. The surgery was done in both the eyes, and lens was centered, as Dr. Amit Porwal has already explained, into a very beautiful position, and there was no surgical complications related to the surgery. Post-operatively, this patient has uncorrected vision of 6/6 in both eyes and N6 in for reading. That was post-operative day 1, and this continued for the 3 months period. And how do you feel? We feel good and very happy about this particular surgery. And what about the patient? How well does the patient feels? And I presume if I feel good, he will also feel very happy about his surgeries. But listen to this patient. He came She came 3 months after the surgery of both eyes. She says that she has a constant problem for the right eye. It feels as if the eye is blasting. There is an explosive fitted in her eye. And she is not satisfied with the right eye surgery at all. The condition of eye has gone worse. So this is a scenario what we commonly face after the surgery, especially when we do a high-end intraocular lens implantations. And more the patient pays, the more the complications. So we did investigate this patient for dryness, and this is what we found. The tear film breakup time in the right eye was 7 seconds, which was less than normal, 11 seconds in the left eye. Shimmer's test was 15 millimeters and 11 millimeters. The lipid layer thickness we did on LipiView systems, and it came out to be 41 and 45, which was quite below the normal range. We did investigate for the meibomian gland, and we found that they were shortened and they were blocked, and the secretions were not complete. Corneal staining was negative for fluorescein, and we diagnosed this patient to be having meibomian gland deficiency and dry eye, which was basically lipid deficient. So now these type of patients, they do present, and they are actually very unhappy patients. Why we miss identifying dry eyes? First of them, we just don't take dry eyes to be a very serious problem. We just look into the cataract and we try to give best possible cataract surgery results to the patient. So why we don't take it seriously? Because the patient have a variable symptoms. They might present with nothing that is complaining of dry eye, or they might have a very severe dry eye. The symptoms may vary with time, the work and the environment in which the patient is working, and the signs are very subtle. We can very easily miss them on examination. Watering is a very common phenomena in these dry eye patients. So once watering is there, the patient also does not complain of dry eye, because it's very difficult to explain sometimes watering in a dry eye case. And of course, there are absent associated ocular diseases. So I call dry eye in a case of refractive eye surgery or a cataract surgery to be an invisible disease, which definitely becomes visible when the surgery is done. What can we do to avoid an unhappy dry eye scenario? So first thing and foremost thing is to identify the problem early, preferably before the surgery. We should consult the patient about the dryness, and that should be done before the surgery and at the time of discharge. And we should tell the patient that some amount of dryness will definitely happen because of the use of medicines and the surgical outcomes. And we should treat the patient if required. That can be done before the surgery or even after the surgery. So understanding dry eye disease is very important for us to give a patient a very happy outcome. So what are the basically dry eye is seen in 75% of the population, and mostly it is seen in a higher age group patients. So most of our cataract patients, they do lie in a higher age group. So most of them, they will be having this dry eye in association with the cataract. And this severity definitely increases with age, and in females and in our population, which is Asians. It is associated with systemic diseases like diabetes and autoimmune, which is also very common in this age group. Ocular comorbidities like glaucoma medications, and other diseases, they do have some influence on the dry eye. Surgical factors like type of surgery, what we are doing, the duration of the surgery, the incision area, the incision size, the area of inflammation after the surgery, they also have their role in causing the dry eye. Post-operative medications, especially steroids, the steroids which are non-solvent, the powdered one, they can lead to more dry eye because they can block the meibomian glands and can lead to increase in the symptoms. On the top, poor hygiene of the patients because they are asked not to clean their eyes, and they are also afraid to clean their lashes for the risk of infection. Environmental factors like climatic factors, peak summers and harsh winters, they do affect dry eyes. Activities that can prolong blinking, like prolonged reading, using mobiles, working on the computers. Low humidity, wind, force heating and cooling of air conditioners can also aggravate the dry eye condition. 80% of these dry eye cases, they are due to the disturbed meibomian gland secretions or the lipid layer deficiency. See, this is a lipid layer graph from a LipiView machine, which shows that that particular patient, what we discussed earlier, to have 41 nanometers of lipid layer thickness, which is below the normal of 100 values. And these type of patients, they will definitely have an aggravated dry eye after the surgery and will complain. We should understand that dry eye is not only the tear film, and all the layers have to be studied separately. The lipid layer, the aqueous layer, the mucus layer, the ocular surface has to be seen. The lid margins and the Meibomian glands have to be seen separately. And on the top, we should also be noting the blink reflex of the patient, because all these things, they do contribute to the overall development of a dry eye. So once we are sure that all these layers are normal, intact, and they're functioning well, then only we do a cataract surgery. Then only we will get a very happy patient after the surgery. And if there is any problem in any of these layers, we should treat them early. So identifying a patient of dry eye is very simple. We should give a questionnaire to the patient, and there are plenty of questionnaires available. What we use is a speed questionnaire. It's a fast 2 minutes questionnaire. We ask the patient about the symptoms of dry eye and the severity. Once we fill in this form, this actually creates a disease awareness in the patient's mind before the surgery is being taken up. And if we find that the symptom score is more than 6, we can investigate the patient for dry eye and try to find out what is the actual cause of the dryness. Once we say that the dry eye is there, then we should be evaluating the patient for tear film breakup time. This tear film breakup time will just give us a general idea of all the tear film layers. Then we do a Schirmer's test, which will give us a good idea about the lacrimal function and the aqueous secretions. We do a lipid layer thickness analysis, which will give us a function of idea about the Meibomian function and the lipid secretions. We should also do a corneal staining that will help us in telling the amount of epithelial damage and will give us a fair idea of the mucus secretions, because if there is a staining, then we can expect there be a goblet cell loss also. Ocular and systemic examinations to rule out ocular comorbidities should also be done. Now, tear film breakup time just gives us a natural capacity of the tears to stay intact to provide healthy ocular and refractive surfaces. If the tear film breakup time is less than 10 seconds, we consider it to be abnormal. Here is the picture of abnormal tear film, which is seen in a 10-second case. Schirmer's test, where we put a Schirmer strip on the lateral half of the lower lid. It basically, we find out the basic and the reflex excretion of the tears. And if they are less than 5 mm, it's suggestive of severe dry eye. And if it's more than 15 mm, it is a normal tear film. Then we put a fluorescein on the corneal surface and see for the staining, or we can use Leishman green to see for the conjunctival staining. If there are epithelial defects, it might suggest that there is an altered mucus secretion or loss of goblet cells. There is a simple technique, just press on the corner of the lids and look for the Meibomian secretions. We will see if the secretions are coming. If they are clear solution, then it is a normal grade 3 tear film lipid layer. And if there is a cloudy or a yellowish colored lipid layer, might suggest little bit of Meibomian secretions are getting worsened. If it is insipidated, it comes like a toothpaste, then it is bad. And if there is no secretions, then it suggests that the Meibomian gland damage is much. It will take another 1 minute. And we look for the lipid layer analysis on a lipid machine. If we see this rainbow pattern on the lipid layer, this means they have a normal and high lipid thickness. And if this rainbow pattern is absent, this suggests that the lipid layer is gone down. We should look for Meibomian gland imaging. This can also be done on our autograph with the infrared cameras. We will be able to define the amount of damage in the Meibomian gland. They will be shortened, or there will be dropouts, or it will be severely damaged. The patient needs to be consulted if we find that there is a dry eye, and they should be made aware of the disease, especially before the surgery. And they should also be told about the treatment if the dry eye is there, and explain that the surgery can aggravate the disease. And we should also discuss the treatment modalities. The disease counseling should be done before the cataract surgery. A well-educated and aware patient will be least unhappy. At time of discharge, we will get, if we explain at the time of discharge, we will get a reasonably comfortable patient. And if we do it 2 weeks or later after surgery, we will have a definite unhappy patient. Even if we do the treatment, the patient is not be comfortable. So what are the treatment options available? Artificial tears, cyclosporin drops, hot fermentation or heat pads, punctum plugs. Now the latest is intense pulse light therapy or a LipiFlow technology, which can help in opening up the meibomian glands and decreasing the dry eye. So for if we have an aqueous layer deficiency, we should be going for artificial tears with punctal plugs. If there is a lipid layer defect, then we should be going for doxycycline, hot fermentation, and meibomian gland expression with the help of lipid flow or IPL technique. If there is a mucus layer defect, then we should be using cyclosporin, autologous serum, or anti-inflammatory agents like steroids or NSAIDs. Meanwhile, our lady with
Doctor, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, just getting over last slide. We used artificial tear drops. We advise the patient to undergo hot fermentation once a day and intense pulse light therapy, one sitting with manual expression of the gland, and reasonably comfortable. She was reasonably comfortable 2 weeks after the IPL follow-up. So for before going for a cataract surgery, we should stop, think, identify, counsel, and treat for dry eye so that we can bring a smile to every surgery. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saurabh.
Identify, counsel, and treat for dry eye so that we can bring a smile to every surgery. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Saurabh.
Thank you. Thank you, Vikram.
It was really well explained the significance of managing or understanding dry eye and how they really influence the outcome for any good surgery. Our next speaker is our next speaker is Dr. Amit Mahajan. Dr. Amit Mahajan did his DMS. There's a problem with the audio system. Yeah, there's Dr. Amit Mahajan did a DMS from JNMC Wardha.
Hello.
He has his own practice. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, everything is the audio
There
working?
was an audio problem a couple of seconds back. No, it's fine. I think we can. And he is doing his practice in Chaliskau, Maharashtra. He's an invited faculty at MOSCOM. He's a national level speaker. And more so, he's a young boy who has a great interest in the latest technologies and always keeps him updated with the latest machines, techniques, and armamentarium. Dr. Amit Mahajan, to please speak on post-op managing post-op issues. Dr. Amit.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, Dr. Amit. Please continue.
Good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Vikram sir, Amit, and All India Society for giving me this opportunity. I don't have any financial disclosures. These are some of the expressions which we get in our post-op unhappy patient. So make it very clear that if you are putting lenses in, you are going to have a patient at some point who isn't happy with the lens. These patients are paying out of the pocket and they expect to pay for the performance. Many times you get that performance, but sometimes you don't. So at times it can be a sort of a tricky pathway to follow. And in this presentation, I will be discussing the same. So first, let's analyze why the patient is unhappy. What exactly is bothering you? Whether it is a vision related, or it is ocular discomfort, or it is something fishy and not specific to our surgery. When it comes to the vision related issues, the main issue is subnormal vision. While the other less important one are obstructed vision, black spots, or glares and halos. For subnormal vision, again there are two possibilities. Either his vision has not improved at all, or with some initial happy hours, now his vision has decreased. So if his vision has not improved at all, then there could be only three possibilities. Either there must be some corneal issue or retinal issue, or patient must be amblyopic. For retinal and corneal issues, get your retinal and corneal colleague involved at a very early stage. This saves you medico-legally, as well as it creates a good rapport between you and your patient. Amongst all these causes of corneal edema, here I just want to draw your attention towards the retained fragment. Sometimes a small chip of fragment that remains hidden behind the iris and that may come out later and touch the cornea and cause edema. Here, the key point is to just remove it as early as possible. Again, in this category, the main culprit is retina in most of the cases. So early OCT may be helpful in detecting as well as to show the patient about the progress. Here again, as per your need, your VR colleague is going to play the crucial role. This obstructed vision, often perceived by patient as a glares, arcs, streaks, rings or halos, dark spots or crescents, typically in the temporal side and temporal field of the visual field. These are mainly dysphotopsias, and that may occur as the rays which strike the square edge of the IOL and get reflected onto the retina. But fortunately, these are temporary phenomena and may disappear within some time. About glass dependency, again, it depends upon the type of IOL. With the trifocal and EDOFs, it has drastically reduced. But one has to be quite sure about the accuracy of the prescribed and dispensed glasses. Then discomfort in and around eyes like irritation, watering, burning sensation, foreign body sensation. Here, the main culprit is dry eyes. And I don't go in the detail as this topic is extensively covered by the Dr. Saurabh. So the take-home message is vision starts with the tear film. Then there are some challenging, sometimes simple, usually infrequent and typically not so serious type of non-specific symptoms. In these all cases, psychological risk factors like anxiety, depression, fear of surgery, attention deficit should be thoroughly investigated. And if needed, a psychiatrist help should be taken. If nothing is found, then go for detecting vitamin D3 and vitamin B12 levels. So in all cases, you must have to have a plan to deal with the unhappy patients. Before you address unhappy patient, one has to be sure that preoperative assessment has been very accurate, surgery was uneventful, and IOL was bang on the target. So this is some of the checklist. IOP must be measured in early as well as late post-op period. Regarding residual refractive errors, I will discuss in details. Sometimes slightest of the PCO can cause bothering visual disturbances. So get it removed as early as possible. So when it comes to the refractive surprises, an ounce of prevention is worth than a pound of cure. Here the first step is to determine what is patient's expectations. Those patients who are asymptomatic and satisfied with the visual outcomes may simply be observed. Then those who are amenable to wearing glasses, spectacle correction should be the first option. And then comes the lens-based procedures. If your toric IOL is misaligned, get it corrected as soon as possible. Piggyback lenses are very helpful. And like Rayner Sulcoplex or Care Group piggyback lens, they made our job very easy. They are available from -10 to +10 diopters wide range. Calculating power is also very easy. So many formulas available and all are very easy. These are got piggyback lenses have relatively very fewer complications. The most important is interface membrane and which can easily be dealt with by YAG laser. And lastly comes the IOL exchange. Visual outcomes are very excellent, but surgery for IOL exchange may be sometimes very challenging. So before attempting an IOL exchange, one has to wait for at least 3 months and one has to be sure that it is the IOL which is bothering the patient. As you can see, the most common indication for IOL exchange is opaque IOL and the least common is refractive surprises. Then comes the laser refractive surgeries like LASIK and PRK, which are very accurate and predictable in less than 3 diopter miss. But the only prerequisite is the cornea should be healthy. So not all refractive misses have to be surgically corrected. So to conclude, let the patient know that you are on the case. You are going to work to get him where he wants to be. You have to take initiative to follow up and continue to communicate with the patient to maintain the healthy relations. We can use a variety of technology and procedures to make our patient happy. But the success mantra is identify the potential problems before you operate. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amit, for such a wonderful presentation. Hope from the whole scenario, the patients will be, we as a doctor will be able to perform better and do help in providing patient with a very comfortable surgical outcomes. Now, in the last, I'd like to invite the chairperson of the today's meeting. Vikram, I want to share the screen. It's okay. Dr. Veer Vikram Chiller, he did his MS from PGI Rohtak, and he's fellow in glaucoma from Aravind Eye Institute, Madurai. He has a special interest in cataract and refractive surgery along with glaucoma. He has various international and national live surgical presentations. He is speaker at a national and state level conferences. He has numerous publications in the journals and has a practice in Delhi and Gurgaon. A good friend of mine and a very noble gentleman. I invite him for the final talk. Over to you, Dr. Vikram.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Saurabh. They were really more than canvas for me. Thank you very much. Once again, good afternoon, everybody. Psychological, emotional, and behavior elements to manage an unhappy patient. It is not possible to make all the people happy all the times. Discontentment from your patient may start even before they have seen you. The 3 points where discontentment brews is a consultation chamber, the intraoperative part, and the post-operative results, which make maximum discontented patients. And the 3 variables are the system, the doctor, and the patient. Your system is your reflection. The patient starts forming his opinion even before he sees you by talking to your receptionist over phone or by meeting reception. So it is a teamwork, and every member of the team has to play his ultimate good role, put the best foot forward so that you have a really happy patient. The front desk should always be polite, smiling. He should always be precise about the time availability of the doctor. Don't bluff patient. It is a crime to make the patient wait. And remember, the patient who has waited more than he should have is unlikely to return back to your clinic. If you or your team were busy during the OPD hours and could not answer the patient over phone, note it down and do remember to call back. Don't say we forget. Sorry, we forgot it. The waiting period should be hassle-free. All the history will either taken by your junior resident or your optometrist should be documented. Repeating the same questions at various stations is not correct. It really makes the patient annoyed. The optometrist should be professional. He should not be making his own diagnosis and management, because if his viewpoint and your viewpoint clash, the patient loses faith in your system. The counselor should read your notes precisely before attempting or trying to counsel a patient for any particular premium IOL. Each patient walking into our OPD is not just an ophthalmic problem. He is a complete package. He is a sum of good as well as bad experiences of his as well of his relatives, and he has got all the valid reason to believe it. Any diagnosis which gonna affect his visual prognosis cannot be very annoying to the patient. Doctors are normal individuals wearing white coat and having a great responsibility on their shoulders. They are among us or like us, but they are very intellect people who put their own commitments on a back burner for others. But the society is not ready to understand them, and there even a slight mistake is not pardonable. Never make assumptions about the medical literacy of your patients. I have a doctor friend whose father lost his first eye during an SRVN surgery. His other eye had a thick PSC, 6/6 vision, RPE changes at the macula. I told him this could be a problem. He said, no problem, go ahead. We operated. Just 3 weeks post-op, the patient had a big RPE rip. The patient lost his sight and I lost my friend, in spite of the best treatment we could do for that. 1 year later, the gentleman comes to my OPD and tells me, if you knew that this could have happened, why didn't you tell it to me? I could have spent more time of my life with a relatively not so good vision rather than having no vision. Another thing would happen. A lady, a very simple looking lady, I operated her. She had a good 6/6 vision, but 1 month post surgery, she says, sir, I cannot do reading work. I said, you have opted for a monofocal lens. You won't be able to read without glasses. She said, you never told me about a multifocal lens. And she was right. I didn't counsel her for multifocal, thinking that a simple lady may be a home lady and she won't need that. In fact, she was a PhD in language and was a vivid reader. So the important point where what I want to emphasize over here, take your patient always in loop while discussing the prognosis, not just to the attendants. It's very important the patient who has to undergo the life should know what can be the possible outcomes for him. And whatsoever may be the medical ophthalmic condition, give all the options to the patient, but tell him these are not suited for you, you should go for this one. We doctors should be very important, working hard on our choice of work because we are very good in language communication. Intraoperative area is again a very important aspect. You should always check the patient data before taking up for the surgery. A very common problem that comes up during the operating point is, sir, I have a work to do, kindly take us first on the list. Be very gentle with the patient. Don't let your blood pressure rise or don't get disturbed. Tell him, sir, there's a protocol for the OT. We first take the single-eyed patients, then we take the toric patients, then the ICLs, and then rest of the list. I try to push you up the list if by chance your name is down, but I cannot promise. Never shout or whisper to your OT attendants, your OT staff. Any change in volume is perceived as a complication by the patient. Don't talk over phone or don't do irrelevant personal talk with the OT staff. This is always considered as a lack of concentration by you during the surgery by the patient. And if unfortunately anything goes wrong, admit it just after the surgery. Talk to the patient and his attendant, sir, we were planning this. This is what happened. And now this is what is going to be the next line of action. And the outcome is going to be little delayed and it's going to be this way. Don't postpone for the next day. Staff training and empowerment is very important. Multiple examples of it are, patient says, I had taken an appointment, but I am required to wait now. On the appointment itself, your staff should be telling, sir, you have an appointment for this time, but your real waiting time will depend upon the ground realities. Have walk-in patients also, or the another option is you can segregate the time of walk-in patients with those of the appointment patients. I paid for your consultation fees 2 days back, or I paid for the cataract surgery, and now you're asking me to pay again. Why? I'm still not satisfied, or my problem are still persisting. You should always have it written on your reception. The consultation is very for these many days, or your post-op free consultation is for so many days, and any change should be told to the patient, and on his last visit of a free consultation, it should be told, sir, from next visit onward, you'll have to pay for the consultation. Another problem which usually comes up, sir, the patient who came after me have left and I'm still sitting. These patients are really mumbling type of to tell them very politely, sir, we understand, not pressed for time, but the patient who have left had come before you, they had prior appointment, or they were being dilated, and still if it's not ready to understand, you show him on your computer screen the time of check-in of the patients. If you have a doctor or a VIP patient waiting in your reception area, just always get up and accost him to your chamber. Don't ask the room attendant to call the name. You getting up and calling the that particular VIP person won't make the patient mumble. And remember, any discontentment which is brewing at this juncture should be handled in the OPD only. It should not be allowed to go to the next step, that is the operating area. And should a person become irrational and he threatens to call the police or the media, you should always remain quiet. In the sense, speak less and listen more. Maybe the patient is right. It is his real genuine problem and it's to make him relax. Remember one thing, the patient will never remember what you said, what he spoke to you, but always remember what you said. So you have to be always respectful, polite, and never be manhandling your patients. And suppose if the patient still blows up, you have right to silent. Again, I repeat it, just control your temper. It is easy to said and done, but remember, doctors are more learned and educated, and they are much superior than general population. So we are expected to handle it in a better way. Our image building and maintaining is very important. So always be polite, proficient, positive, so that people can vouch for you. If you still feel it can be a physical intimidation, always maintain a safe distance and call your staff for help. Saying that you are under a CCTV coverage will always put the patient off. And having good relation with the local authorities is always good. Always document all complaints, even if you had a commotion in your OPD, always document it and keep your statements always respectful, brief, and clear. Saying that you calm down or yelling is not going to help. The patient is going to rather shout more. According to the belief of from such situations, is always better to invest time in them. Always find solutions for the problem. Focus on highlighting the solutions. Give plan B, plan C, and always in a simple language so that the patient can understand. And always end the conversation in a positive note. Ask what he wants and how he thinks can be achieved. Suggest options, and don't forget to summarize that this is all the problems and this is what we are going to do to help you. And let me tell you, all the complications are not the patients. We surgeons are responsible to a great extent. I'll show my examples. I operated a LASIK patient. His second eye had a buttonholing. I put back the flap, did a PRK, and naturally the patient was not having good vision. After 1 week, till I could just handle him, he came with his father, uncle, and couple of his friends. He came at the fag end of my OT to the winter days around 8:30 at night when we had nobody in the clinic. And they were really angry at me. Sir, you have messed my child's eye. I said, no, sir, wait for 3 months. It will be all fine. It's a little problem, but that will be fine. He comes back to me and at the same time, I am more prepared. They said, sir, we have taken 2 further opinions, and they said your eye has nothing can be done about it. I said, no, sir, you'll have to wait for 3 months. You have messed my child's career. He's got it done for recruitment purposes. And if you can do it tomorrow morning, do it, or else pay me back the money. I had no option but to have to give him to a LASIK. I explained post-op. His father could understood, but his elder brother said, doctor, you will have to pay for your eye if something goes wrong with my brother. Once a cataract patient who had a multifocal IOL, he had a +3 error post-op. I had to do IOL exchange. And the patient had a -1 spherical post-op. She was not ready to buy any of my explanations, near dominant, distant dominant, no. So I had to put an add-on -1 spherical for her. A patient to me and said, I want to be spectacle free. I said, okay, we checked him, and he needed toric IOL. So I explained him and we got it done for him. Sorry, we did it for him. 1 minute after, he said, sir, but I still need glass of warning. I said, okay, so you'll need them, but you haven't put a multifocal, it's a toric. He said, sir, I said for glass independence. And he was right. There was a communication gap from my side. I just went on for the toric, not for the toric multifocal. So what I want to emphasize it's not just because of why the patient is angry. I was also responsible in not this and many more circumstances and conditions where this happened. Once in my outreach hospital, we had to end off. I person over there to send them to a day center. We saw the patient, but both the patients were very angry and they were in a very bad conditions. So I talked to them, sir, what we are now going to do is trying to just save the eye. I'm not talking about vision. I'm very sorry. I didn't do it, or you wanted it, but it is unfortunate it has happened. So you'll have to understand it. And but what true the possible in the books for you, and I'm not going to charge you anything for that. but you have all the reasons not to be happy with me, sorry, not to rely on me and not have faith in me. You can go and take treatment anywhere else you like, but that I'm not going to pay for that. I'm ready to handle it on my own. I did them, but had vision, other didn't have a good vision. So these are the way we can mess up the situation by our actions, our not so deliberate ones, or our communication, lack of communication skills. Now, psychological strategies, emotional intelligence, it is the ability to identify and regulate your feelings and feelings of others around you. Calling them by their name gives a good rapport. Practice reflective thinking. Reflective thinking is seeking to understand the patient idea and offering it back to him so as to confirm that it has been understood by us. Understand the core issues. Always approach like a beginner. Don't show your knowledge and expertise. Let him speak first and then you handle it. If it seems it's a big problem, break it down to small compartments so that you can handle the smaller issues easily. Always show empathy. Always remain calm. Just don't give it. I always say, fake it until you make it. And once you have achieved the solution or result, pat on yourself and take a break. Remember, neither you nor your practice will survive if you are not healthy and if you don't, if you neglect your health. So what we have learned from it, the unhappy patients are the greatest source of learning. Your mistakes tell you, yes, I should not be doing all these problems. And they are, a patient problem is a major opportunity for you to build your relationship. Always welcome the patients. Patient has reason for it. Don't brush them away. If you know the patient has a problem, walk up to him and say, sir, had I been in your place, I wouldn't be happy with the results. Now we know this happened, and see. And when patient, in spite of your best possible effort, is not ready to understand, is gonna take a second opinion. It's always better to refer the patients. Thank you. Thank you very much.
An excellent talk, Dr. Vikram. Fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I don't think we have any questions as of now. We have some time. What I'd like to say, and I'd like to discuss with all the participants who were here. Dr. Agarwal has left because he has a presentation in another hall. Rest 5 hours. I'll just slightly size what the take-home messages. Start from the patient's expectations, as Dr. Sumit pointed out very clearly. Understanding the patient, telling him the realistic expectations, or trying to understand what he actually wants, and counseling him on the various aspects and steps of the surgery, about the IOL and the cost factor. See, these all small things do make a difference. At the end of the day, when the patient feels, yes, you told him, sir, it's going to cost this. You have a non-dilating pupil. I have to put in a pupil expander, and it costs maybe an additional 1,000 or 2,000 more. So once, when the final bill comes, it says, why this extra money? Patient doctor already told me this can be an add-on, because it does make a lot of difference in the practice. Each penny counts, and patient feels cheated. You have given him expectation of 35 and the end of 40. You give him 38 and bill him to final at 34. So this is one of the. And as Dr. very nicely to the pre-operative considerations, taking care of the addicts is very important. That is really very, very well put by. And she told it's how important with those flora, the normal common flora from the lid, from the cultist, can really cause a lot of issues. Then Dr. Amit Porwal was there. He told us about perfecting each step is vital. Don't rush through surgery. See, I would just share when I was in the beginning part of my surgical career, I would try and hasten the surgery. Then some great surgeon to me, do each step perfectly, you will be working very fast. Don't go the speed, just concentrate on each step and perfect each, and then your surgery will be very fast. That's what Amit Porwal told. And he highlighted the importance of using a trepan dye, and each step, rotate of the nucleus and inserting the IOL, and in case it's upside down, how to flip it. Then was Dr. Saurav Mittal, managing dry eye. See, dry eye can be a big issue. It will be the one who can mess up everything if you don't take care of it. from pre-operative, operative, post-operative, and as rightly said, tell the patients before surgery. And what a really point important which I gathered is that his code testing. Just giving the paper for 2 minutes will make the patient, yes, something is important, the doctor is asking. And those questions will hammer in his head, sir, there's something like dry eye, and that is gonna affect your vision if it is not properly treated. So that Radak, Khujli, and those patients come up, they are hell of a nuisance to us post-operative, sir, there's something inside the eye, I just cannot sleep, it is irritating, that are really, really awful for surgeons. Those 2-minute questionnaire can help this problem to a large extent in a very long run. And that was really very great, Dr. Saurabh, very good message. Then how to handle the various the tear film, how are they affected and how you can handle them. And then Amit Mahan, as usual, very nice speaker, managing post-op issues. He really told very nicely what are the take-homes and how to handle the challenge. When is the right time to do IOL explant? When is the right time to go for laser correction? And what all important things we should be taking care so that the patient doesn't have problem in his post-op vision, like the dysphotopsias and various other irritation problems which are part of the dry eye. In the last, I tried to with the psychological aspects. I wasn't talking of the medical aspect. So it was just psychology and the emotional aspect which was discussed, how patient who is there with you can get in a wrong track right from the beginning, right from the reception part, how is that at the reception, it is made to wait longer. Number 2 is not polite, not okay ambience in your waiting area, or you are cutting his number, the queue, or during the surgery part when you unnecessarily are talking to somebody and you don't realize. Then post-operative, his issues, how you should always go a step ahead and talk to him, accost him, discuss his issues, not run away from such people, and always try and give him multiple options. Important part, as Dr. Som truly said, you should be treating the papers. She's very right. Documenting each and everything is important. To dear friends, taking care of all the medical aspect, the non-medical aspect, the psychological aspect, but everything should be documented. And the language should be very respectable, very clear and simple. So that is something which can hold you in the court, because using medical terminology is not gonna, then the lawyer and the judge will require a lot of interpretation, in a craft will be lost. So it will be very simple. So that is another important aspect, documenting everything what happened. If there was a fight in the OPD, document on that patient record which you have at your place. Don't forget to leave it. And then after that, as I said, multiple options should be given to the patient and it should be explained how you are going to handle them. And of that, you can always have a lot of unhappy patients. And remember one thing I always say, it's your patients who goes from one doctor to another. For mine, use everybody's. The unhappy patient will go to a doctor shopping. A happy patient is not going anywhere. He's always sticks to you. He will just listen to you and refer more patient come for his other eye. The one who is unhappy is going to go. That doesn't mean that you are not a good surgeon or somebody's, suppose Dr. Sumit patients come to me and he says, this is what happened. I know Sumit is a very great surgeon, but it is our duty at this stage to counsel the patient as colleague of ours, to tell him, sir, this is not a complication, this is what can happen. If you say this, it's not that I have not done it, it has been in my hands only, the patient will be calm down, get relaxed, they'll understand it. Yes, it is not something what surgeon A has messed up your eye. Never say he has messed up, because see, you are also not free from these problems. You have also done your part of complication, and I can see very clearly I've done lots of complications in my life, surgical complications. So never put names in some complications. Maybe you are going to be the next in line. That is as a, I would say, as an oath for all of us, for our colleagues. And so we try and achieve happiness, the final aim of humanity, the goal for all of us to be happy, happy, happy. and let's see we can help our patients by what we have tried to discuss today. I'd like input from my co-speakers.
Yeah, very nicely said, Dr. Vikram. And I endorse the view that we as people who are in medical college, we get people from all around the state. And many of them have been to different surgeons and they just complain of that the surgeon must have done something wrong with my eye. That's why I'm not able to see that clearly. Or he has, the main complaint I have always understood is that the person who has operated has not given the patient enough time to counsel and say that these things happen and these can be, they can be rectified. So just by giving them some time and then assuring them that, yes, there is nothing wrong with your eye, everything is fine, he has done a great job. The only thing is that this is the problem. You have a slight dry eye, you need these medications and you need to be just, so we don't ever say something against the surgeon who has operated upon the, who has been operated upon. So that is one message I would like to say to all the audience who are here, if they are listening, that never criticize your fellow colleagues because you are in the same boat. You have also done the same mistakes that the other person has done, if he has done. You can, it's very easy to find faults in others and very difficult to see them in yourself. So it's always better that if you can explain it to the patient, and if you can, in our practice also, if we can just spend 2 more minutes with the patient post-operatively, that would, allay all his fears and the problems.
Yeah, this is again a point for making the patient happy. Once he realizes that it is not a complication, it is not a mistake done by the surgeon, he tends to forgive that surgeon. And once you have the element of forgiveness, you are at peace with yourself and you are calm. That is absolutely correct. So that really helps a lot. Yeah, Dr. Saurav?
Can I add one point?
Yeah, Dr. Amit, please.
Yes, I want to just add one point that if whenever we are planning for the premium cases like a toric or multifocal, we must have a standby lens, because in our library we are not having standby lenses for these toric powers or trifocal lenses. And in one of my patients who was posted for a trifocal, by some mistake, my assistant has broken that haptic of that multifocal lens, and I was having any standby lens. So from that day, I try to remember that whenever I am planning for any premium toric or any premium multifocal, I must have at least one standby lens with me. So that can be tackled.
Yeah, very correctly said. Very correct. This has actually the butterflies I have in my when I'm putting in a toric or a trifocal. When I'm loading at premium, I always load myself, but I always have that jitters. God forbid, if something happens while pushing to the trailing haptic, I don't have backup. Very right. So I have a library of multifocal, but yes, for toric, I don't have. Yeah, Dr. Saurav, really, that's good.
It's very important to have a pre-operative counseling for each and every patient. Sometimes when we get stuck with keratoplasties, we normally explain each and every patient that the percentage of acceptance of a keratoplasty will be somewhere around 90 to 95%. And they just skip it from their ears, and they will just see that the result will be 100%. See, 95% or 90% what we talk, they don't listen to that. And sometimes if there is a patient and if you can club those patients together, I have a walking OPD of my corneal transplant patients. So they will be sitting next to each other. Some will be very comfortable with good results and some definitely will have a graft failure. If the patient to patient counseling is also done, like see, I have a very good result and this do happen. And similarly in a cataract surgery cases, see, I had received a very good result. So it's important. So patient to patient counseling also helps in decreasing the unhappiness of the patient. It's not only we keep on explaining the patient. Second thing, it's very important for your staff to tell the patient that this type of complications might arise. This type of things do happen with most of the patients, like irritation, watering, redness, and swelling of the lids. They do happen with each and every patient, and most of these patients with 2 to 3 weeks, they do get better. If the staff tells them, it's more of a friendly nature. If we talk to them, it's more of a commercial thing that happens. So I think our staff should be equally trained to explain to the patient that these type of things might happen, and the results will be better with time. So that one message is there. So we should have a very good trained staff in dealing all these patients, even the happy ones, even the unhappy ones, both.
Rightly said, Dr. Saurabh. As I said, it is a teamwork that you have put in a very elaborate and right communication skill. It being a teamwork, each staff member has his responsibilities. He should be telling all the patients very clearly. He shouldn't be putting his views or ideas or diagnosis into it. Yes, these types of two things do happen, and they take time to resolve. So that is really important. And one more thing which I do, if the patient doesn't have a good prognosis, I speak that poor prognostic point patient multiple times during my OPD for a surgery, and even on the day of surgery. It's like repeating and hammering into his head, boss, this is a problem with your eye, and this can lead to a discontented vision. What I feel, those people who get irritated, why the same thing I said, this is to ensure it that you really understood it. Tomorrow you shouldn't be upset because of it. But you shouldn't need to stop and go a line. That is important.
I do have patients who have walked out of my keratoplasty clinic with the hand movements, and they are still happy. At least the doctor has tried doing something good on me. Because they were all explained very well in the beginning that surgery might not be fruitful.
So I think we are done with the presentation, the discussion among ourselves, and we don't have any questions to us. I'd once again like to thank the All India Ophthalmic Society for having us today and tolerating us. And I'm very, very thankful to all those speakers who took off time from their as well as hospitals and their very busy schedule to be here to discuss. And audience, thank you very much. And once again, thanks a lot. I think we can leave the meeting now.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Meeting you all virtually. Hope we all meet up in physical form sometime once all this pandemic is over.
Yeah, next year, sir. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, chairpersons and speakers, for such